what hope do we have of like bridges being formed at some stage where compromises can be achieved, where maybe we can take Afghanistan, or Afghanistan can be taken forward into the global community?
Actually, this is the question that we really everyone is looking for an answer. Um, and the agreement for bringing peace to Afghanistan, which is the actual title of the agreement, and which happened between the Afghan Taliban and the United States in February 29, 2020, in Doha, Qatar. The basic purpose, the aim of the agreement was to facilitate
Let's talk
the
about
U.S.
Afghanistan and geopolitics. While in recent days, Afghanistan may have faded away from the spotlight due to more pressing issues such as the war in Ukraine or the ethnic cleansing being committed currently by Israel in Palestine, Afghanistan nevertheless remains one of the key focal points in geopolitics today. I want to discuss the current situation in Afghanistan and also maybe talk about the balance of power both within Afghanistan and also in the region. But to make sense of events, I want to put things into some historical context. Joining us today, we have a distinguished guest. Dr. Tauqeer Hussain Saigana is the Associate Professor in Politics and in the International Islamic University in Islamabad. In addition, Dr. Tauqeer also serves as the President and Chief Investigator in the Pakistan Association for International Relations. As a special bonus, stick with us until the end because I'm also going to get Dr. Tauqeer's perspective on the current tit-for-tat attacks between Iran and Pakistan that took place in January this year, 2024. So please join me as I welcome Dr. Tauqeer Hussain Saigana. Thank you so much for giving us the time at short notice. I really appreciate the honor of having you on our podcast today.
It's an honor to be at your podcast.
Thank you so much. So just for our listeners, tell us, where are you speaking from today?
Yeah, I'm Dr. Tauqeer. I'm at the moment in Islamabad, and I'm working here as an international relations academician. So that's my professional understanding and background related to different aspects of geopolitics and geoeconomics. So that would be not an official perspective of Islamabad, but a perspective from an academician today.
Excellent. Yeah, I was going to mention, so you have like a really impressive, diverse resume. Would you like to tell us a little bit about what maybe some of the projects you're involved in currently, or some of the ones that you've worked on in the past? I also saw that you spent some time in Tokyo. So if you would like to just tell us a little bit about what you were doing there.
Yeah, actually, I am a Rotary World Peace Fellow. I was selected through a rigorous process of Rotary International. So there's a global fellowship that has been given to those individuals that are believed to be contributing in peace and stability around the globe in different domains of global governance, as well as the governance that deals with some local challenges and issues in all domains of human life, human security, as well as the national security. So my area is basically part of international relations and part of South Asia. I have been working on different issues between Pakistan and India, Pakistan and Afghanistan, and the surrounding region. So with that perspective, I was able to get some position in that particular fellowship, and I was allocated that. And Tokyo is one of those centers which host Rotary International Centers of Peace and Conflict Studies. So my stay was in Tokyo, and I spent a wonderful time in terms of getting groomed and trained to understand different aspects of peace and stability, as well as theoretically and practical aspects of that. So my stay was there, but before that, I have been working for different public sector universities in Pakistan, such as Qaid-e-Azam University, Islamabad, and I have been working in one of the very prime institution think tank of Pakistan, which was Islamabad Policy Research Institute. This institution has been, an institution of great repute and respect in Pakistan. So with all this background, I have got an acquaintance with some strategic institutions of Pakistan where I have been contributing in the highest, institutions such as National Security and War Course at National Defense University of Islamabad, as well as at different military institutions. So that's a kind of background which has given me leverage to become more relevant in strategic discussion in Pakistan. So, with overall understanding of this particular perspective, so I have been able to get closer to some of the intelligentsia which belongs to the future generation of international relations in Pakistan. So I'm right now, not governing, but in time of it's a kind of platform which is called Pakistan Association of International Relations. So I'm the founding president and chief researcher of that association as well. Yeah.
That's amazing. This is why I would be really interested to hear your perspective, because you seem to have you're right in the middle of all the action. So um, you've been teaching in naval college and military academies, is that right as well?
Yeah, exactly. I have been, as I already told, that because of my background, I have been part of Pakistan's highest military course, which is called National Security and Workforce. As well as I have been associated with different strategic institutions that include Pakistan Naval War College. There's at General Headquarters of Pakistan Army. There's a there's an law directorate. I have been associated with that as well.
Brilliant. I'm really excited to get started. So today, I wanted to talk to you about the current situation within Afghanistan. Afghanistan, as you know, has been in the limelight since September 11th, 2001, until maybe recently in August 2021, when America finally withdrew from the area. Um,
Yeah.
we don't hear so much about what's going on now, and that's maybe because other events like what's happening in Russia and Ukraine has taken over in terms of global media. But I'm sure Afghanistan still plays a vital role in the geopolitics of the region. So I wanted to get your point of view, some of your, if you could share your knowledge about what's happening in Afghanistan. But I was thinking what we could do is I want to know what's happening in Afghanistan currently. But before we get into that, maybe we can have a look at historical events. So
Mhm.
to start with, because it seems like decades, um, something or the others currently constantly going on within Afghanistan, which is really unfortunate for the people in Afghanistan. They're amazing, lovely people, but it just seems unfortunate. There's some sort of um, war or um, civil wars. There's lots going on. So if we start from what happened in, is it 1979 when Russia invaded Afghanistan?
Yeah. It's very tragic and unfortunate that whenever Afghanistan has been discussed in international relations, most of the time the country is referred as a graveyard of great empires. Whether it was the Great Britain that when they were colonizing the South Asia and they were interacting with Afghanistan's geography, their experience was not appropriate in terms of political settlement. The same happened when in 1979 Soviet Union invaded Afghanistan due to their own geostrategic proximity. The country again once again faced a lot of turmoil and trouble. Because of all these, developments, the Afghanistan as a country has never been given a consideration that it could become a part of the mainstream world, where development, peace, economic sustainability could be something that could be taken out from for the benefit of the region and the global community as a whole. So that's very unfortunate for the people of Afghanistan that with all their credentials, with all their geostrategic importance, though landlocked, but they have never been able to pitch themselves. They have never been able to place themselves for the benefit of the community, for the international community and the regional community. That is something very tragic for the sake of the youth of Afghanistan, past, present, and future of Afghanistan. Unfortunately, um, since we in Pakistan interact on regular basis with Afghani youth, so we have been able to understand their pain, suffering from a primary source as a first-hand, witness to that tragedy. But that tragedy is somehow vested or manifested in the geopolitical considerations of global politics. As a result, Afghanistan became a battlefield for global competitions. So 1979 is not different to that. Somehow, when it comes to legally or politically defining what happened in 1979 was a kind of political consensus between the then regime, which was a communist regime ruling in Afghanistan, along with that, the regime which was in Soviet Union, we all know that that was a communist regime as well. So that a communist regimes, interaction with another communist regimes was a kind of agreement between those regimes, those two countries,
Hmm.
the Soviet Union, the former Soviet Union, as well as the Afghanistan. So the invasion is a word which has been crafted and created within the literature by one of the other competitive power, which was the United States at that time. So whenever we talk about these things in a region or with some Afghani people, some of them who follow the legacy of communist manifesto or communism, they usually talk about that it was a kind of agreement that Soviet Union was coming into Afghanistan. It was not an invasion. But when you talk about some of
Yes.
those majority factions who follow a Western literature or Western perspective, they used to say that no, it was an invasion. So that invasion gets more, aligns with the Islamic perspective because the Soviets or the communists are not considered a kind of religious
Yeah, there was a big
affiliates.
propaganda at the time of
Yeah,
how we're fighting
at
against
that
a
time.
godless regime.
Exactly. So that godless regimes have been seen as a devil's regime, as a regime which is anti-Islam or anti, culture, which majority Muslims of Afghanistan were following. So the Christians world, which is the Western world, that finds more, friendship, more alliance with the Islamic world because they are godly creatures. They believe on God, and we Muslims believe on God. So that got a natural alliance. So that invasion perspective became a kind of excuse to denounce the then Afghan regime as well as the Soviet Union, because Soviet Union was denounced due to the Truman Doctrine, the containment of communism policy, which was not only happening at that time, it was already happened in Vietnam War, during the Korean War, and at a lot of other places in the world. But 1979 was another time period where the same containment of communism policy came into exercise. So that godless and God-loving, framework of global politics and region politics, as well as the internal dynamics of Afghanistan, got aligned, where Pakistan, where Saudi Arabia, where different groups of Afghanistan came together and they created a kind of war, which was, that it was a subconventional war, it was a guerrilla war, it was a war which created a kind of chaos in Afghanistan. So the repercussions have been too many, and even still, this region is facing all these things.
True. How long was that the communist regime in Afghanistan? So before the quote unquote the invasion in 1979, how long before that did the regime in Afghanistan come into power? Like, how did Afghanistan have a communist regime to start with?
Well, when it comes to finding out the roots of an ideology, as in context to Afghanistan's political dynamics, you will not find too much sources of that, and then neither you will
Yeah,
be able
no,
to
I've not
find that.
read
Yeah,
much about it. Yeah, you're very right.
yeah, yeah. So that's the biggest reason that Afghanistan's own political dynamics usually shaped its outlook in the region as well as at the global politics, because this is a tribal, country
Hmm.
where Pashtuns are as a single, community. Pashtuns are in majority, but when you look into the overall demographic dynamics of Afghanistan, you will not find Pashtun as the majority. So non-Pashtun are in majority. That is another outstanding outlook of political and socio-political dynamics of Afghanistan. But normally, Afghanistan has been known as a Pashtun country, which is not true, because when you look into Afghanistan's, as I've already said, dynamics, you will find out non-Pashtuns in majority. So Central Asia has been influencing Afghanistan, as well as Iran has been
Yeah.
influencing Afghanistan, and because almost 12 provinces of Afghanistan are bordering with Pakistan.
Mhm.
They are
Wow, I
huge
didn't know
number.
that.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah, there are almost 12. provinces of Afghanistan which border Pakistan, and you will be astonished to know that the Pakistan share around 2,611 kilometers long border with Afghanistan, and these
I was going
12
to say,
provinces are
it's
yeah.
one of the biggest borders in the world, is it? Or
Yeah, somehow it is one of the
yeah,
a kind of landlocked context you can find in South Asia, one of the biggest border which Afghanistan shares is with Pakistan. Like you will be Nimroz, for example, Helmand, Kandahar, if I correctly remember, Zabul, Paktika, Khost, even Paktiya, Logar, Nangarhar, Kunar, Nuristan, and Badakhshan. These are those
all of
provinces
them are
which are
bordering
actually
Pakistan.
bordering Pakistan. Two provinces of Pakistan are connected with that, like starting from the former FATA region, and now it's merged in Pakistan's KPK province, Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province. So the
Hmm.
Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province as well as the Balochistan province is connected with the eastern and southeastern regions with Afghanistan. So it is really amazed at how big geopolitical dynamics are connected with Pakistan at the moment. So that's why Afghanistan's political dynamics are more of a regional, more of internal, discourse. They follow that one rather than they borrow ideologies like communism or capitalism or something else outside the world from outside the world. So you will not be finding communist as a kind of an inheritance within the cultures of Afghanistan. It's not that way. Yeah.
Interesting. As we're recording in audio, would you possibly be able to, for the benefit of our listeners, maybe draw a um, like a verbal map of the external borders of Afghanistan? As you mentioned, it's a landlocked country. So,
Yeah.
what are the countries bordering Afghanistan?
Yeah. So, as I have already explained that there are around 12, in total, you will find there are around 34 provinces. Afghanistan is divided into 34 provinces. Normally, they call it wilaya as their normal language. So, the provinces of Afghanistan are the primary administrative divisions. Each province usually encompasses a number of districts, or usually they call it villages. So, 1,000 villages are around in each province. Somehow that's a number that we tentatively configure. So among these 34 provinces, the 12 provinces are bordering with Pakistan. So this is the highest number of that. So when it comes to, for example, let's say Iran is another country which borders with Afghanistan. So the Herat province of Afghanistan, which is on the west side, it borders with Iran. Uh, and another province of Afghanistan, which is Nimroz. This province also shares border with Iran in the southwest side of Afghanistan. So along with that, another country which borders with Afghanistan is China,
Hmm.
and the Badakhshan province, which also shares border with Pakistan. So that province also shares a small border with China in the northwest, in the northeast of Afghanistan. So, but that border is situated in the remote and mountainous Wakhan corridor. Normally, we call it. It's a very small 20 kilometers, a very small place. So that's Wakhan corridor, which joins with Afghanistan with China. Another country, Russia is not at the moment sharing any border with Afghanistan. Usually it used to, because when Central Asia was part of former Soviet Union. So at that time, the ex-Soviet, now ex-Soviet states, as a Central Asia, they share border with Afghanistan. So when you see the same province, which is Badakhshan, which joins China, Pakistan, as well as Tajikistan. So you will find Badakhshan province also shares a border with Tajikistan in the northeast of Afghanistan somehow. So there is another province of Afghanistan which is called Kunduz. That province shares a border with Tajikistan in the north with Afghanistan. Another province, I believe, is Balkh. It's called Balkh. That province shares a border with Uzbekistan in the north. They have another province which is called Faryab. So the Faryab province shares a border with Turkmenistan in the northwest, I believe. So there is another province of Afghanistan which is Jozan, Jozjan, something like that. So
Hmm.
that province shares border with Turkmenistan. So these are the ex-Soviet states, Iran, China, and Pakistan that share border with Afghanistan's border is stretched over these countries. But
Wow.
as I told you, the 12 most important regions, Pashtun regions, are connected with Pakistan. Yeah,
Yeah, so Afghanistan is in the crossroads of civilizations,
yeah,
and that's why we see a reflection of that in terms of languages and culture and differences
very true,
within Afghanistan. Um,
very true.
so, so Soviet Russia enters Afghanistan in 1979. Um,
Yeah.
Tell me if I'm wrong, but as I understand, so America, the West, other countries didn't get involved in the situation immediately. Um, it, it was maybe about 4 or 5 years after that that they decided to think that we can get back at the Soviets for what they did in Vietnam, and we can make something out of this. So when did um, America's interest develop in what was happening in Afghanistan?
Actually, when if you look into the expansion of Soviet Union, not only in towards South Asia but elsewhere as well. It's not that it is not something that we can discard that the United States of America was not looking at where Soviet Unions are moving. Rather, they were very much concerned since the very inception of Truman Doctrine that wanted to contain Soviet expansion through two instruments. One of the instrument was economic instrument that was the Marshall Plan of 1948, which helped to reconstruct Europe, and another instrument was the military instrument to contain Soviet Union, which was the NATO, North Atlantic Treaty Organization, still alive. So on United States of America has eyes on United Soviet Union from the very beginning, but when they ended up into Afghanistan in 1979, that was after a kind of detente, which was a period of peaceful coexistence between the former Soviet Union and United States through an agreement which happened in the aftermath of Vietnam War. So for that time period was a kind of confidence that maybe Soviet Union would not be expanding further, but it did not. But it actually it happened, and it raised very strategic concerns within the strategic calculation of the United States. So for in the beginning, the calculations were mostly in terms of scenario building and posturing, then how Soviet Union is expanding further. But keeping in view the history of Soviet Union, if you look into Russo-Japanese War of 1905 to 1910, when Soviet Union was expanding towards Port Arthur of the Korean Peninsula, which is in North Korea at that time,
Hmm.
more precised in geographically. So that was actually an expansion of Soviet Union towards warm waters. So usually in literature you will find out that Soviet expansion towards it was Afghanistan was not the target as a whole, rather Afghanistan was a mean to achieve towards the end, which was getting to warm waters, which were in Pakistan at that time. They're still here, but geographically speaking, keeping in view the historical interest of the Soviet Union. So most of the intelligence reports which were produced by Western capitals, they mentioned that Soviet Union is heading towards the warm waters, the same way it was heading towards the warm waters of the Korean Peninsula at that time. So this calculation was not only within the strategic circles of or security circles of the of the Western world. Rather, the same understanding was within Pakistan's supreme intelligence agency, the Inter-Services Intelligence Agency (ISI). So Pakistan was also very much concerned about Soviet expansion at that time, but the means available to counter such a big mobilization of Soviet Union, Pakistan was unable to cater or find out a way forward. So in terms of understanding, Pakistan has been capable of decoding Soviet interests. The same was true for the Western world. But on local, you have to find out what is the local pulse. So as we have already discussed, the tribal orchestration of politics within different areas of Afghanistan, even they did not like such a move of the then Afghan government, who wanted to facilitate Soviet Union's expansion towards Afghanistan. So a local resistance was there. So that local resistance was seen as an opportunity by the Western, uh, community. Especially, I'm talking about the United States of America, and Pakistan was also keeping an eye on such developments. So it was, by 1983 that the United States formally started communicating with the then Pakistani president, military dictator, and president General Ziaul Haq, who initially was very much reluctant to become part of, United States, war of insurgency in Afghanistan against Soviet Union. But later on, in another occasion, it was decided that they would come together and make an alliance and try to strengthen the local mujahideen in a way that they can continue the resistance against Soviet Union. And then it actually unfolded an alliance between United States of America and Pakistan, and there were some other countries like Saudi Arabia who were involved with that.
That's very interesting what you're saying about Soviet access to warm waters, because it's something similar that we're hearing currently with the waters bordering Ukraine and who has control over that, as well as I think Russia and before that Soviet Union had access to warm waters in Syria in Tartus, which is why there was such a big kind of a strong bond, and that why that's such strategic importance to Russia, what's happening in Syria.
Yeah.
Um,
So yeah, yeah, yeah. Go
yeah,
ahead.
that's interesting. But also, I was
Yeah.
wanting to know. So, as Pakistan started getting involved in what was going on inside Afghanistan, um, I remember there was like lots of threats, whether real or perceived, for Pakistan as well. There was some news about how um, there was red lines drawn across Peshawar and other places, um, saying that it could be like the target for like a nuclear strike or something like that because of what Pakistan was doing inside Afghanistan against the Soviets. Is there any
Well,
truth in that?
no, not as such, but when you go back, for example, 1950s, late 1950s, yes, we can find something related to Peshawar. For example, in 1954 and 1955, September 1954 and September 1955, when Pakistan joined US-led alliance to contain Soviet Union, which was SEATO and CENTO. These two security pacts actually created annoyance in the Soviet Union, and because of that, when Pakistan ended up in a strategic agreement with the United States of America, which helped Pakistan to build its military strength. So as a result, Pakistan has to offer its an air base in Peshawar, which is known as Barabar base. So, and one of the incident which happened at that time, it was U-2 incident, which was spying over the Soviet territories, and Soviet Union was very much annoyed with that, and because of that incident, Soviet Union actually circled Peshawar and mentioned that they are not happy and they would take care of that particular engagement of Pakistan with the United States of America. So Pakistan has been paying price on that, but and the same perspective of Soviet Union later on created a lot of problems for Pakistan when 1971 Pakistan was facing some critical crisis in East Pakistan now, which is known as Bangladesh. So because of this trajectory, a troubled
Mm.
trajectory between Soviet Union and Pakistan, this India signed a friendship treaty with Soviet Union in 1971, in August 1971, and when we see that in December 1971, precisely on 16 December 1971, Dhaka falls and the East Pakistan disintegrates from Pakistan. So in that, when Pakistan was trying its best to bring ceasefire resolution in the United Nations Security Council. On three occasions, Soviet Union vetoed that resolution. So that's a troubled history of Pakistan in terms of geostrategic, politics, which was led by the United States of America under the notion of containment of humanism. And since Pakistan was part of containment of humanism, and it had been, as a result, it had been, paying a big price for that. So when the same happened in 1979. The Soviet Union was expanding towards Afghanistan. Pakistan was very much apprehensive of Soviet intentions that Soviet Union would not stop itself only in Afghanistan, move forward towards warm waters. And there have been, in Afghanistan's perspective, there have been a lot of disorientation that even the border between Pakistan and Afghanistan, which is known as Durand Line, even Afghanistan's few regimes have not been able to, accept it as a legal, as international sovereign border between Pakistan and Afghanistan. So these all, fault lines were, convincing Pakistan that they would be moving ahead and moving forward towards Pakistan's territory. So all these complications were again convincing Pakistan to become part of so-called Soviet jihad and United States-led proxy war against Soviet Union and Afghanistan. So as a repercussion, Pakistan was facing again some, bombings, some strikes in the bordering areas of Pakistan. But at that time, Pakistan was not a declared nuclear country and does not have detonated any device. So Pakistan became nuclear weapon state on 28th May 1998 as a reaction to Indian nuclear detonation on 11th May 1998. So that's the nuclear, context comes
Yeah,
afterwards,
yeah,
after 1990. Yeah,
yeah. It's interesting because of the troubled relations between the Soviet Russia and Pakistan. Some of that, as I sometimes hear in the news, some of that tension still persists, and both governments are trying to overcome whatever happened in the past, because Soviet Union was a different entity to what Russia is today. And I think even Imran Khan, as the Prime Minister of Pakistan, was inside Russia when Russia invaded Ukraine recently. Um,
yeah, yeah.
so
You're right.
yeah, so are things improving between Russia and Pakistan now?
Yeah, attempts have been made from the both sides to introduce normality in terms of diplomatic relations. But when it comes to Pakistan's geoeconomic, geostrategic, and geopolitical dimensions of national interest, uh, Russia does not become a natural ally in that pretext. Natural ally in terms of geoeconomic, geopolitical, and geostrategic dimensions qualifies United States of America all the time. It's not that Pakistan has some Western, love relationship or a crush with America. It's not like that. But keeping in view genuine security needs and United
Yeah,
States diplomatic and military exposure to the global governance. So it is a natural friendship and alliance between United States of America and Pakistan that has always paid well. But somehow, as I have already told you that the repercussions also did not help Pakistan to stay firm. But when it comes to cost benefits, so I think Pakistan has reaped more benefits as compared to cost. Yeah,
sure. Also, out of interest,
yeah.
slightly different topic, but as part of your work, do you often get chance to meet academics or even security personnel within Afghanistan? Have you had the chance to visit Afghanistan, or do you have delegations from Afghanistan visiting Pakistan for any
I have
formal studies, or
Yeah, I have
you
been
have?
able to interact. Yeah, I have been able to interact with Afghanistan's officials in Pakistan, but somehow I usually do not prefer to visit Afghanistan due to my own security concerns and academic
Sure,
calculations. So, but I have been able to meeting to Afghan diplomats and a lot of other people. Yeah,
sure. Okay,
yeah,
so just to move things on a bit, so the Russian Soviet-Russian presence in Afghanistan lasted a decade. I think it was almost a decade to on the dot until February 1989 when the
Exactly.
final. Um, so so what happens after that? Afghanistan falls into a prolonged period of civil war, which was brutal
Yeah,
and very unfortunate. Um,
very true.
First of all, how did that happen? Could that have been avoided? Was that inevitable after such a long period of kind of external powers playing their role within the country and then a vacuum being created, or could that have been avoided?
Yeah, well, that's more of a subjective, question and would require a subjective, answer as well, because, one cannot predict the, how great powers are behaving when it comes to their interest in conflict, and wars are not something that one can predict at the end of the day. Starting war is, it's easy, but ending, how to end the war, it is one of the biggest questions before any military general, or the states which prefer war as a mean of to achieve political objectives. So that's the biggest dilemma for for Afghanistan as well as for Pakistan, altogether, because the person who was the masters of war in Afghanistan, it was General Ziaul Haq at that time. So General Ziaul Haq, was assassinated, was killed. For example, he was coming from Bahawalpur, after attending a public rally. So his plane was, bombed. It was just crashed, and even along with him, the then U.S. ambassador was also killed. So even the one who was leading this war in Afghanistan from Pakistani side, he was unable to, conclude that war. So and it had an impact on the repercussions
For sure.
and the aftermath of Soviet disintegration. So the invasion of the Soviet invasion actually sparked a decade-long conflict. As you have mentioned, from 1979 to 1989 with Afghan, so Afghanistan Mujahideen, which were normally called as resistance fighters, they received support from United States, Pakistan, and other countries. The conflict resulted in significant loss of life and widespread destruction, with millions of Afghans becoming refugees and internally displaced persons. And more than 5 million Afghani refugees ended up in Pakistan. We know that the Soviet Union eventually withdrew its forces in 1989 under an agreement marking the end of the occupation, but the country was left in a state of chaos and instability. So the aftermath was that we saw, an Afghan civil war that almost continued from 1992 to 2001, till the time of 9/11 incident. So the Afghanistan was plunged into a civil war, which was characterized by fighting between various Mujahideen factions, who were vying for power. Earlier, they were fighting against the Soviet forces, but when Soviet forces were no more there, they were fighting with each other to grab more power, to amass more power. So the collapse of the communist government led to the formation of a fragile coalition government in Afghanistan. But internal, divisions quickly emerged, leading to widespread violence and instability in the country. And the warlords and regional militias, they exerted control over different parts of the country, contributing to lawlessness and human rights abuses in Afghanistan. So that was one Afghanistan in terms of geography, but there were so many different regimes working within Afghanistan. The civil war further devastated, Afghanistan's economy and infrastructure, and exacerbating the suffering of its population. So which resulted another, dimension of Afghanistan, and that was actually the rise of Taliban, which in more precisely started from 1994 till again 2001, till the time of the 9/11 incident. So in this, against the backdrop of civil war and instability, these Mujahideen got their own faction named Taliban, so who emerged as a powerful force in Afghanistan by the 1994. So comprised largely of Pashtun students who were, studying in some madrasas, or who have already studied in madrasas. So the movement promised to restore order and enforce strict Islamic law, which is normally as Sharia in the country. So with sport, it is it is said to be believed that with the support of Pakistan and other actors, the Taliban rapidly gained control over large parts of Afghanistan, including the capital Kabul in 1996, and then they were recognized by Pakistan, and on the behest of Pakistan, Saudi Arabia and UAE also recognized Taliban regime by 1996. So the Taliban regime imposed harsh and oppressive rule, as we know that, implementing strict social codes, restricting women's rights, and harboring extremist groups like Al-Qaeda. So the Taliban's rules was overall it was characterized somehow by widespread human rights abuses and international isolation, leading to sanctions and condemnation of from the international community. So afterwards, we know that in 2001, the incident of 9/11, led another invasion to Afghanistan. So, but again, it's a political contextualization of war against terrorism. The way Soviets entered in Afghanistan, it was called an invasion. The same very way when US started its Operation Enduring Freedom regarding war against terrorism campaign. So it is again, mentioned by many that it was US-led invasion in Afghanistan. So that happened altogether.
Very true.
Yeah.
How did it happen that so for 7 years or so after the withdrawal of Soviet Union, uh, we had very powerful war-hardened factions fighting each other within Afghanistan. Um, at that time, Taliban didn't exist, and then as you say, they came out of nowhere, more or less, came into our conscience in 1994, and then within a couple of hours, they were inside controlling the capital, Kabul. So, who were these people? Were these people a new generation, or were these people um, aligned with some of these factions, but then separated and then created a new entity? How was the Taliban movement created?
Yeah, it's a very interesting story because these groups which are normally known as Mujahideens,
Hmm.
they were in total 7 groups which were trained on the behest of the United States, proxy war in Peshawar, in Pakistan's Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province. They were provided logistics and training to operate in Afghanistan, and they were operating very well. Somehow, in terms of skills, they were not up to that level where they can outcast, a strong military force of the Soviet Union, who have been able to conduct war based on icons of warfare, tanks and aircrafts and all things. So, but they were very well trained in terms of carrying the proxy war in Afghanistan, and they did a good job there. And that's why they called Mujahideen and the freedom fighters for the world at the end of the day. But the composition of these mujahideen were, altogether representing different communities of Afghanistan, Pashtun and non-Pashtun. And most of them were fighting in their own, geographical proximity. So they were there and they were fighting for the greater cause of liberating Afghanistan from the Soviet, shackles of slavery, and a lot of different names were given to that. So once Soviet disintegrated, the biggest problem was that, as Hillary Clinton, the former Secretary of State of the United States, also mentioned in one of the interview that, it was the Ronald Reagan who created this insurgency, the Republicans, and once when they achieved their objective in Afghanistan, they just abandoned Afghanistan and they just left Pakistan, at the behest of the then emerging challenges. So the U.S. was not there to take care of it and how to conclude that a decade-long insurgency war. So the absence of the Western powers, particularly the absence of the United States of America, who was the main leader behind this orchestration of proxy war, was has created a gap, has created a vacuum. So no one knew there how to go ahead. And I have already mentioned that the master of the war, General Ziaul Haq, who was leading the war at the front from the Pakistani side, he was again no more alive. He died. So because of these changes, so the region was not able to get into that context there where stability or peace could be the future course of action. So everything went into a kind of situation where everyone started moving ahead. So that's why the Mujahideen were incapable of negotiating in between themselves. So they started fighting. So when they started fighting, that created a lot of challenges for the followers of that time who were unable to find a cause, which was the religious cause, to fight against a common enemy. So when they were fighting with each other, they were all Muslims, all these seven groups. So that
Yeah.
disorientation within the ranks and files of Mujahideen were not sellable within different tribal, cultural, contestation within political, stability of Afghanistan. So through this, new factions, got their, independent outlook. So, 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 so the biggest stakeholder at that time in terms of a sovereign nation was Pakistan, because, as I've told you, there are 12 provinces which are bordering with Pakistan,
Hmm.
and these 12 provinces share around 2,611 kilometers border, and most of these provinces are Pashtun provinces. So that border does not have any fence or any security layer. So it is just like a village is stretched between two countries. Like half of the village is in Afghanistan and half of the village is in Pakistan. So they say share same language. It's the same families. So it was a kind of worry for Pakistan, because the kind of jihad which was introduced in Afghanistan, the same Sharia, the same jihad would would idealize so many different factions to be implemented in Pakistan, because so many Pakistani Pashtun community were actually in Afghanistan fighting against the Soviet Union. So when the Soviet Union disintegrated, they came back. They came back with the same ideology. So Pakistan was at the crossroads, at, at the behest, at the mercy of these non-state actors carrying an ideology which does not have any direction at all. Only violence, only with force you can do whatever you can. And how can Pakistan suddenly tell them that now the political objective is achieved and you should not be carrying the same global political objective towards Pakistan or any other part of the world. So this was again Pakistan's apprehensions to secure its own borders, and it was having a close eye over Afghanistan. And all these different Mujahideen groups were expecting from Pakistan that Pakistan would provide them shelter and Pakistan would provide them political legitimacy. So this group needs to be the sovereign group of Afghanistan, leading political process in Afghanistan. So every group expected from Pakistan, and Pakistan cannot settle down them. Pakistan
Hmm.
was unable to settle them. So that situation actually created a chaos for almost 4 or 5 years. So in between, when this happened, so some natural process of uh, building an order was started within Afghanistan, within these students or youths which were studying in different part of Afghanistan, and they were already part of these Mujahideen clusters. So somehow they mobilized themselves, and an incident has been quoted that something happened in part of Afghanistan, and this Mullah Umar, who was once jihadist and fighter for one of the groups, Mujahideen groups, and during a war, even he lost his one eye. So he was just running a madrasa, a mosque. So a complaint came to him, and he was just he walked with that complainant to address his complaint. So when he interacted with the other accused group, and the settlement was unable to resolve the issue, so they start fighting with each other. So Mullah Umar was able to fight well, and he was able to kill others. So when this news spread around that he's a man who can protect us, so a civil disorder is going on between the mainstream Mujahideen groups, but within Afghanistan these kind of things are happening. So people started coming along with Mullah Umar, and he started bringing more tribals with him. So that gave birth to a movement of Taliban. So that those Talibans, when they started fighting with the so-called Mujahideens by denouncing the way of their fight and politics, so it gave momentum an impetus to a kind of force, which then in 1994 was formally became it, the Taliban and of course then Pakistan, keeping in view its own national security priorities, had to get along, because talking to Taliban was quite easy as compared to talking to other factions of Mujahideen, which were not coming on together on one page or one platform. Yeah. So that's how it they were united in Pakistan back then.
Interesting. So by 1996, the Taliban movement takes over Kabul and actually maybe about 60-70% of the whole country. Um, and so we know of an entity called the Taliban, and then parallel to that, there's another entity which is Al-Qaeda, which is not one and the same thing, but have a lot of things in common. So they're running in parallel. Can you tell us a little bit about that? So I've also read somewhere that when the Taliban took over Afghanistan and Kabul, Al- Osama bin Laden was already there. So a little bit in the defense of the Taliban, what they have said previously is that they were not the ones to bring Al Qaeda in to Afghanistan. They inherited Al Qaeda. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, you're right. That happened because they inherited the Al Qaeda affiliates. Actually, to the best of our understanding, the Taliban does not have any sympathy with Al Qaeda at that time, but kind of cultural context, if you have to see that, and they have a Pashtun Wali code where they respect their guests, and they do not hand over, they do not denounce their contributions, whatever they did.
Mhm.
So we know that this Osama bin Laden, came into Afghanistan from Saudi Arabia, Al-Zawahiri from Egypt, and this all orchestration was, the Arab Muslims were working along with the Mujahideen in Afghanistan against Soviet Union. So when this Mujahideen ended up into civil war, they did not even allow these Arabs to play any part in the civil war. So they were not directly part and parcel of the civil war, other than they were just staunch observers over there. So with all these developments, when Taliban came into power and they became a force in Afghanistan, a reality in Afghanistan. So they did the same thing. They did not bother these Arab Mujahideen or factions. Rather, they just provided them the space to stay quiet and do their work, what they are doing there. So they did not have any kind of affiliation with them, but they inherited a kind of baggage which they actually protected under their own code of social codes and cultural values, rather than based on some kind of global agenda or regional agenda that they would be useful or handy to help the Taliban at that time. So that was the overall perspective. But as we know that the so-called Arab, these Mujahideens were having their own agenda, and Al Qaeda was kind of outlook that we have observed at the end of the day.
Yes, interesting. And the reason that Osama bin Laden was in Afghanistan at that time was because um, Osama bin Laden was from Saudi Arabia, and a lot of funding was coming in from Saudi Arabia via Pakistan to Afghanistan. And is it right that Osama bin Laden was one of the funders, but then decided that he wants to play a more proactive role in the jihad against the Soviets, which is what brought him into Afghanistan? So by the time the Taliban came in, that was the reason for his presence there. And then obviously things changed because now there's no more Soviets, but now we have these factions within Afghanistan fighting each other, and in the midst of that, we have like, um, was it an Arab faction inside Afghanistan, or were they there supporting an existing tribal?
Yeah, actually, I would not say that the government of Saudi Arabia was funding directly to Osama bin Laden or any
Sure.
kind of faction operating in Afghanistan, like Mujahideen, any faction of Mujahideen or any other faction of the Arab world. Rather, they were as a state, they were responsibly, become they were responsible part of the U.S.-led proxy war in Afghanistan, where United States of America, Pakistan, and Saudi Arabia were all together on a very calculated basis. So whatever was given by Saudi Arabia or whatever was given by the USA, everything was
On a
it was
state-to-state basis.
yeah, state-to-state basis, and so no independent entity was created in Afghanistan. Actually, that was one of the objectives of Pakistan's ISI and Pakistan's military establishment at that time, as a whole, the state of Pakistan, that it did not allow any indirect interaction of any of the countries, including the United States, to directly deal with the situation in Afghanistan. So that the reason was obvious, because then those groups would become independent factions within
Yeah,
Afghanistan
that
that
was
could
wise
create problems for
decision. Yeah.
Pakistan. Yeah. So that was a clear policy over it. But Osama bin Laden as a person, as an individual, belongs to a very rich and wealthy family.
Hmm.
So he does own his own resources. And many of the Arab people which were coming into Afghanistan on the behest of Al-Qaeda, so not Al-Qaeda, Al-Qaeda became a later entity, but on behest of Osama bin Laden, al-Zawahiri, because they have been very proactively leading some of their own political movements in Saudi Arabia and in Egypt. They have very good number of friends there who would love to come into Afghanistan, join them, and along with their own resources. So their resources were separate one, coming to their own pockets and their
Yeah.
own affiliate. So it has nothing to do with the official, contribution of Saudi Arabia or Pakistan. Yeah.
Okay. So so then we have um, from 1996, another 5 years. The Taliban are ruling Afghanistan. There's still some small-scale fighting going on inside Afghanistan, and then we have September 11th, 2001, the well-documented attack on American soil. Tell us
Yeah.
a little bit about what happened in that context around that time.
Yeah. Actually, for example, this so-called rise of Taliban and how Pakistan, connected with them, and afterwards the 9/11 incident, which was unfolded in unfolded at new events in Afghanistan. First of all, Pakistan's support for the Taliban emerged as a strategic response to the chaos and instability of Afghanistan civil war. That's the
Yeah.
pretext of Pakistan's support to Taliban. So the Taliban, largely composed of Pashtun students from religious schools, as I've already said, which were madrasas, were seen as a force capable of restoring order and stability in Afghanistan, because the disorder was, getting multiplied day by day, because the Mujahideen were not settling down and Taliban came into existence. So the calculation of that time was that they have to get something out of nothing. So for that reason, Taliban were considered a kind of reality that can a force capable of restoring, order and stability in Afghanistan. So Pakistan provided crucial support to the Taliban, including diplomatic recognition, military assistance, and as well as logistical support. So the ISI played a key role in facilitating the Taliban's rise to power by providing training, funding, and intelligence sharing. So as a result, Pakistan's support for the Taliban was motivated, as I mentioned, by various factors, including the desire for a friendly government in Kabul, strategic depth against India, and concerns about the spread of radical Islamist ideologies. Because if there is a regime in Afghanistan and Kabul, they could be asked to take certain steps, and those steps would help Pakistan to bring stability within Afghanistan as well as Pakistan. So Pakistan's role and involvement in these historical events of Afghanistan have been based on complex and shaped by its own strategic interests. So as a result, when it was there, but the stability as a whole was not something that we can positively pitch on. We can say that it was Afghanistan became a kind of country or state that brought an ideal situation. Somehow it was evolving. It was nurturing the kind of required sense where Afghanistan can move forward and inclusively include other part of its ethnic or sectarian population. But what we knew that in on September 11th, 2001, 9/11 incident happened on U.S. soil, and marked a pivotal moment in modern history, and had significant ramification as a result for Afghanistan and the wider region. So that that incident actually, where 19 hijackers were associated with the, terrorist group of Al-Qaeda, who carried out that coordinated suicide attacks against targets in the United States. So we know that four commercial airlines were hijacked, and with two planes crashing into the Twin Towers of the World Trade Center in New York City, and one into the Pentagon in Arlington, Virginia, and the fourth crashing into a field in Pennsylvania, Virginia, passengers, attempted to regain control of the aircraft. So that's how 3,000 innocent lives were killed, and it caused widespread devastation and shocked the world, including the United States of America. So Al Qaeda, which was led by Osama bin Laden, they claimed the responsibility of the attacks, and that whole episode, after the aftermath of September attacks, that investigations revealed that the mastermind behind the plot was Osama bin Laden, who was then residing in Afghanistan, so under the so-called protection of the Taliban regime. So that Al Qaeda then had established training camps and operational bases in Afghanistan, where it had been planning and orchestrating terrorist activities, including the September 9/11 for many years. So the attacks prompted the United States to demand that the Taliban government hand over Osama bin Laden and dismantle Al Qaeda infrastructure in Afghanistan. But however, the Taliban refused to comply with these demands, leading to a swift and forceful response from the US and its allies. So then this Operation Enduring Freedom, on October 7, 2001, which was less than a month after the September 11 attacks, which was also supported by the NATO allies and Afghan anti-Taliban forces. They launched a military operation against the Taliban regime and Al-Qaeda targets in Afghanistan. So the US-led invasion, the Operation Enduring Freedom, it aimed to overthrow the Taliban regime, also to dismantle Al Qaeda's terrorist infrastructure and bring those responsible for the September 11 attacks to justice. So the invasion involved airstrikes, we know that ground offensives and special operations, which were conducted by the US and coalition forces. So Afghanistan's anti-Taliban and militias, including the Northern Alliance, they also played a crucial role in supporting the coalition's military campaign. So at the end, so the Taliban regime was swiftly ousted from power, and a new government led by Hamid Karzai was installed in Kabul. So Al Qaeda's training camps and safe havens in Afghanistan were disrupted, and many of its leaders and operatives were also captured and killed. And Pakistan played a very important role in dismantling Al Qaeda, because most of the Al Qaeda operatives were captured and handed over by Pakistan to the United States of America. Yeah.
Yeah. It was very unfortunate. I mean, what happened in September 11th, 2001 was obviously an unfortunate event for the US, but for Afghanistan, it was proved to be devastating, because whatever one might think about the Taliban government at the time in 2000, 2001, it at least it seemed like that the country is now ready to move on from this long period of infighting. But it just pulled the country back into chaos, and the next 2 decades kind of saw us going from removing the Taliban kind of just evaporating, fleeing into Pakistan, maybe. I'm not sure, you can tell us about that. To where we are now, more or less back where we started, more than 20 years later. So tell us a little bit about maybe the success or the failure of what happened since 2001 until now, in terms of actually changing the government structure, or what was the desired outcome for the allied forces working behind the US, and how successful have they been, and where are we now?
Yeah. So actually, most of the time when it comes to deconstruct the overall situation in Afghanistan, there are multiple approaches, which include the U.S. perspective as well as the regional perspective, and there is again one inward perspective of Afghanistan, Afghani experts as well. So with the perspective of U.S., their objective to dismantle Al-Qaeda, and which was considered as one of the biggest threats to U.S. interest, not only on her own soil but also for allies globally. So for that reason, that threat has no more that can pose any challenge to U.S. allies and U.S. interest at the global level. So for that reason, yes, of course, that war, the U.S.-led war, the Operation Enduring Freedom, has reaped the benefits for the U.S. strategic interests at the global level. But when it comes to the commitments made with the people of Afghanistan in terms of bringing stability and peace for the country, so far we have seen that promise has been very much compromised to the same regime which was actually overthrown and dismantled in 2001 through the operation. So Taliban they became the reality, and with the so-called glorious arrogance that now they have been able to negotiate well and defeat the United States of America after 20 years. And now the so-called, installment, or I'm not saying installment, but their power, capture of Kabul, has given no hope to the people in Afghanistan who want a bright future. Because when we talk to the youth is very much pessimist in terms of getting confidence from the global politics that has promised that these non-state actors and these actors which believe in power, force, anarchy, chaos, they can get rid from these elements from Afghanistan. So they are the one who are right now ruling Afghanistan. The girls are unable to go to schools. The civil society, the women have not been given, power to speak and freedom to move around. The non-Pashtun communities, the Tajiks, Turkmanis, Hazaras, they're not able to find themselves in the inclusivity of peace political process in Afghanistan. So what about the governance system of 34 provinces of Afghanistan, where Pashtun Taliban are nothing to do because their own local cultures, their tribal understanding, their linguistic pride, how it is going to end up into social contract of Afghanistan, how the aspirations and hopes are going to get aligned with the 21st century, the norms and values. So all these challenges are causing a lot of problem with the inward, questioning of political process in Afghanistan. So which is a dilemma, which is a casualty at the end of the day. So the regional perspective, again, the Pakistan's tireless efforts. We know that more than 80,000 lives have been sacrificed by Pakistan. Pakistan is not a country that can be forgotten when it comes to measure and calculate the destruction and damage and a cost that any nation has paid in the world. So Pakistan's 80,000 people they lost their life. Billions of US dollars, more than 120 billion US dollars have lost by Pakistan in this war. But again, the same country, after giving so much sacrifices, the same country, the Pakistan, is facing dilemma from Afghanistan. The TTP, the so-called Taliban Pakistan, is operating in Afghanistan, and they are still causing a lot of damage and insecurity to the peace and economic stability to Pakistan. And there are some non-state actors who are still using the territory of Afghanistan against the interests of Pakistan. So overall, within the regional perspective, within the inward perspective of Afghanistan, the hope had been, died with the achievement of political objective of the United States. So it's not that I'm not trying to refer here that it is a fault a deliberate fault within the US strategy, but I'm just talking about a global perspective in terms of uh, connecting the dot of a reality which is persisting today. And I'm sure that the responsible outlook of the United States and its commitment to ensure global peace and stability is not doing the same mistake that they have done when Soviet Union were disintegrated. And as per former US Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, when she said that we abandoned Pakistan, we abandoned Afghanistan. So I strongly believe that the United States of America at this stage is not abandoning Pakistan. It's not abandoning Afghanistan. So the kind of interaction they are trying to develop, we have hope that these inward, apprehensions of Afghanistan and the regional apprehensions of Pakistan are very well tackled by United States of America. So they are doing good job. I hope so because the circumstances are different. So that it would take time, but they are on one page and they would be doing something for the greater stability of the region and Pakistan as well.
That's
So,
very interesting and a very needed positive note in the whole unfolding of events.
Before we go any further, let me just take a moment to introduce our sponsors for today. Today's episode is proudly sponsored by the Worldwide Listings Company Limited, or WLC for short. WLC is a leading e-commerce management agency helping businesses succeed online. So whether it's looking for new products, supplier sourcing, account creation, creating listings, keyword research, image editing, video creation, or managing your PPC campaigns and advertising, WLC can provide a complete A to Z package that is tailored around your specific needs. So whether you're new at the e-commerce game or an established business wanting to take your sales to the next level, get in touch. WLC is here to help and support you every step of the way. Now, for transparency, let me also explain my own relationship with WLC. I'm actually the founder and the managing director of this fantastic company. So that means that I'm actually placed in a unique position where I can offer you a brilliant deal today. So if you are interested in e-commerce and you feel that you may benefit from some help in managing your account, then get in touch and we can offer you 1 month management with zero fees. So you'll be getting 30 days of expert work for absolutely no cost to you at all. Simply, when you speak with someone, just quote Kianistan and I will personally make sure that you're well looked after.
I do want to talk a little bit about the TTP, Taliban Pakistan, but before we get into that, just to sum up what's happened since, was it August 2023 when the US finally withdrew from Afghanistan, and the government that's come into power now in Afghanistan, again the Taliban movement, how is it similar to what the Taliban were in 1996, and how is it different? And is there any hope that there can be, like, what do we see happening in the future? Because the previous Afghanistan government at least had recognition from Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, UAE, as you mentioned previously. This government seems to be diplomatically isolated. And what hope do we have of, like, bridges being formed at some stage where compromises can be achieved, where maybe we can take Afghanistan, or Afghanistan can be taken forward into the global community?
actually, this is the question that we really everyone is looking for an answer. Um, and the agreement for bringing peace to Afghanistan, which is the actual title of the agreement, and which happened between the Afghan Taliban and United States in February 29, 2020, in Doha, Qatar. The basic purpose, the aim of the agreement was to facilitate the U.S. The withdrawal of U.S. and NATO forces from Afghanistan and pave the way for intra-Afghan negotiations within, inward, to achieve a comprehensive peace settlement. That are the two basic objectives of that agreement. The withdrawal as well as the a peaceful environment where intra-Afghan negotiations could become a reality. So the agreement, stipulated the phased withdrawal of all U.S. and NATO forces from Afghanistan within 14 months, contingent upon the Taliban's commitment to preventing terrorist groups, including Al-Qaeda, from using Afghanistan soil to threaten the security of the United States and its allies, especially Pakistan as well, because Pakistan has been playing an important role to, bring Taliban on the table to talk to uh, United States of America. So the initial withdrawal of U.S. and NATO forces would, reduce the number of troops to 8,600, within 135 days of the agreement's signing. Further troop reductions would occur in subsequent phases with the goal of a complete withdrawal by May 2021. That was the actual agreement we was talking about. Another phase of the agreement was called, for a reduction in violence between the Taliban and Afghan security forces, leading to a nationwide ceasefire. The Taliban also committed to refrain from attacks on U.S. and coalition forces during the withdrawal process, and they committed to that, and they were able to ensure that the reduction in violence period actually served as a confidence building measure to create conditions conducive to intra-Afghan negotiation and a lasting ceasefire. Another aspect that the agreement emphasized the importance of intra-Afghan negotiations between the Taliban is representatives of the Afghan government to reach a political settlement and achieve a comprehensive ceasefire. So the intra-Afghan negotiations were expected to address key issues, including power sharing arrangements, the future government structure of Afghanistan, the rights of women and minorities, and the implementation of a permanent ceasefire. So the agreement was a very holistic, questioning of or aiming peace and stability in Afghanistan. So the Taliban also committed to prevent terrorist groups, including Al Qaeda, from using Afghan soil to plan and conduct attacks against the U.S. and its allies, as I've already said that. So these, including prisoner release. So this agreement has been the fundamental document to lead the post-US withdrawal scenario and situation within Afghanistan. But unfortunately, as we knew that it did not happen, the Taliban took over the in Kabul with force, and the Ashraf Ghani has to run amok. So the afterwards, nothing was appropriately done by Taliban's, the Afghanistan Taliban. So that particular breach of the confidence, which was expected from Taliban, has actually again, hit the positivity very hard, and their affiliation with their increasing affiliation with the local factions like TTP, again, improved apprehensions, or increased apprehensions within the security calculations of Pakistan, because Pakistan expected that the factions which are working against the regional peace would be tackled by Taliban positively, on the same lines the way they promised to tackle Al Qaeda, and not to help Al Qaeda to operate traditionally the way they used to do against the US interests. So it is true that Al Qaeda has been not capable to use Afghan soil against any US interest, but it is not true that the local factions like TTP, Tehrik-e-Taliban Pakistan, is dismantled by the Taliban. Actually, the information comes, and we have seen many times that within Taliban, there are certain groups in Afghanistan which harbors and facilitate and abet, Tehrik-e-Taliban Pakistan against Pakistan's interest. So here I am very much cautious to say that few factions in Taliban. The reason is that I'm not making guilt I'm not passing or I'm not blaming that the overall Taliban regime in Afghanistan is actually believing on this thing that the anti-Pakistan factions should be supported or facilitated. But few faction of Taliban, a faction within Taliban, Afghanistan Taliban, they are doing this thing. So that's how this particular discomfort at the moment is causing a kind of tit for tat political posturing by Afghanistan's regime as well as by Pakistani government. So this is something that United States of America needs to address, and I am sure, as I have already mentioned, that at the top level, political negotiations are happening between Taliban, Afghani Taliban, Pakistan, and the Americans to settle down this issue on a peaceful way. Another part of your question was about Taliban Pakistan and how they emerged and what is the basic background of them.
Yes, please tell us a little bit, if you may, um, who they are. Are they the same, one and the same as the Taliban of Afghanistan? If not, what is their role, and are they like a bone of contention currently between Pakistan and Afghanistan government? And if so, what is the issue?
Yeah, so I also remember that you have asked a question about the Afghanistan Taliban, whether they are the same of 1996 and the current one. So I'd also like to
Yes,
answer that as well.
please.
Oh, well, they are changed. They are the one who now understand diplomacy, who understands issues of governance, who understand international law, who understand the importance of global governance. Uh, the 1996 Taliban were actually, just warriors. They were just jihadis. They were just people who were able to understand the language of violence, and they reciprocate and respond to the same language. But right now, the generations of Taliban, they have been living in Pakistan. They have been, they have been moving around. They have been in Qatar, Doha. They have been talking, negotiating with regional actors. They have been into China. They have been into Pakistan. They have been into Russia. They have learned and acquired a kind of knowledge which is necessary to transform their thinking uh, on a platform where they understand the interest of other nations, where they understand the economic realities, geostrategic, geopolitical, and geoeconomic dimensions of global power politics, and as well as peace and conflict studies as a whole. So that is something which is a
That's
reality.
really reassuring to know. Yes.
Yeah, that is something very a positive change and very important reality in Kabul at the moment. But the baggage which is somehow carried out by the current Taliban regime in Afghanistan is based on something which actually creates an internal strife or tussle of implementing a decision, and which is why some of the Taliban factions are old minded, old school, religious, stalwart that that actually create problem within. And because of those, factions, even Pakistan is facing problem. So there is a difference, but the time and continuous engagement with the Taliban regime is the only way forward and solution that you will help those positive, learned, and changed Taliban leadership to become stronger. If they are disconnected by the regional forces, if they are disconnected by the global forces, especially by the United States of America, the old school Taliban's would take over the modern Taliban's political thought. So it is important to continue connectivity. So
Very true.
that's the difference at the
To
moment, and
engage.
I believe on
Yes.
that. So regarding Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan, so actually the Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan actually is known as an Islamic militant group which has been based in the tribal regions of Pakistan, which is alongside the Pakistan border. So it was formed in 2007 as an umbrella organization of various Pakistani militant groups, including factions of Afghan Taliban, Pashtun nationalist groups, and other Islamic militants. So the TTP's primary objective is to establish Sharia law in Pakistan and overthrow the Pakistani government, which it views as corrupt and un-Islamic. It has carried out numerous attacks targeting Pakistani security forces, government officials, and civilians. When it comes to the relationship with Afghanistan, so the TTP has a historical ties with the Taliban and other militant groups operating in Afghanistan. It has used Afghan territory as a sanctuary and base for planning attacks against Pakistan many times. Actually, they are right now in Afghanistan at the moment. So Afghan authorities have been accused of providing support and sanctuary to TTP militants, allowing them to operate freely in border regions and launch attacks into Pakistan. So Pakistan has repeatedly called on Afghanistan to take action against TTP sanctuaries on its territory. And that call is not only with the current regime of Afghan Taliban, but it has been a call for the Ashraf Ghani, which was a democratic government, to before him, the other regime. So it's a continuous process that Pakistan has been doing. So and somehow, unfortunately, the political side of Afghanistan, when they were in power, they they have been relying on certain groups to hand twist Pakistan. So that is an unfortunate thing within the history of Afghanistan, as well as now there is Afghanistan Taliban, and as we have discussed, that there is an old school faction that believes on hand twisting Pakistan. That's what they support is, hand twisting Pakistan through these TTP factions. So that has impacted on Afghanistan relations negatively. So the presence of TTP sanctuaries in Afghanistan has been, a major source of tension between Pakistan and Afghanistan, as we have discussed. So Pakistan accuses, Afghanistan of harboring and supporting TTP militants, while Afghanistan accuses Pakistan of providing support to Afghanistan, Taliban in the past. So this claim or this accusation comes from those factions of Afghanistan, which now they don't like Afghan Taliban to rule in Pakistan. So Pakistan is facing dual sword. So either you support Afghan Taliban, so then a faction of Afghanistan would accuse Pakistan, and if Pakistan supports some other factions of Afghanistan, so then Afghan Taliban will accuse Pakistan. So Pakistan is always in a heated situation here. So these acquisitions have, actually strained bilateral relations between Pakistan and Afghanistan, so contributing to mistrust and suspicion on both sides all the times. So efforts to improve security
Yeah,
cooperation, it is important that they should do their efforts to improve security cooperation and address mutual concerns, that have often been hindered by these tensions. So the cross-border terrorism and security and peace efforts and reconciliation is the only way forward that we have been talking about, and that's the solution that through engaging the modern Taliban in Kabul would be very fruitful, I believe so.
it's interesting, and yeah, it's unfortunate. Pakistan is in a situation where it is damned if you do, damned if you don't,
Yeah.
um, because we can't disengage from all the events, and at the same time, there's no perfect solution to what's going on. Could you just also tell us, with the TTP, the Taliban Pakistan, is there any faction within the TTP that might be willing to talk with the Pakistani government and maybe integrate with the Pakistani state, or is it a complete enemy of the state, and the only solution is like a military solution?
Actually, if you look at the composition of TTP at the moment as we speak today, TTP is is not a kind of organization anymore that can be called something which is a real threat in their own composition. Rather, TTP is becoming a kind of
A
borrowed
nuisance.
faction, yeah, as something that you can invest on and use against a country. That's why they are able to sustain because of Afghanistan's space. So if they are not in Afghanistan, they does not TTP does not find any political, any ideological, any material support within Pakistan anywhere at the moment. But yes, of course, when they were being formed in 2007, where various Pakistani militant groups, including Afghan Taliban, Pashtun nationalist groups, and other militant Islamic movement groups, they all together created that faction as something credible, and they were getting more momentum, they were getting more strength, and their vision and their perspective was, very much, became a natural course of, hatred and revenge against Pakistan because Pakistan was supporting US-led war against terrorism.
Yeah.
And so everything of there was very much justified because they consider
Mm-hmm.
Pakistan army as an army of, you know as a Christian army, as an army of West rather than an army of Pakistan, because their agenda to implement Sharia, they consider Pakistani constitution, Pakistan armed forces as the biggest threat to Sharia. So that's why at that time their composition, their momentum was very much, ideal. It was fruitful. You
Yeah.
put just a seed over there, seed of thought over there. You get the whole tree instantly in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
Giving you fruits all the time. So right now, there's nothing happening in Pakistan in terms of disorientation. The state of Pakistan may have been facing at the moment a political turmoil, which is of a political nature. It has nothing to do with something, like terrorism, because there are some political voices in Pakistan, and we have been observing some upset over here. But that's a process of evolution and transformation. It happens everywhere in the world, so it's also happening in Pakistan. The
Yep.
state is intact, but these factions don't find any ideological affiliates anymore in Pakistan. The 2% area of Pakistan, which was formerly known as FATA, it is now merged into KPK. It is now part of Pakistan's Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province. It is now the elections are happening there. The local government is there. I mean, the administration is there. You know, people are reaping the fruits of governance in FATA region.
Mm.
The region which was normally as known as provincial tribal area of Pakistan, which was the Malakand division, the Swat region, where military operations
Yeah.
everything is now inclusive. So at the moment, TTP is now a kind of entity which hostile agencies to Pakistan, that could be any intelligence agency which is hostile to Pakistan, they can invest on TTP to keep them alive. So the faction of old school faction of Afghan Taliban who are keeping them alive. So they are in ICU at the moment, the TTP. So the oxygen, the ventilator has been given by some of the intelligence agencies and the old school faction of Afghanistan. So which is why Pakistan is always trying to convince them, trying to tell them that they have to declare that body dead because that cannot survive at its own. So I hope so that understanding would prevail, and TTP would be. Even you don't need to do a lot of efforts to dismantle TTP.
Yeah.
It's only a political decision that this is not reality uh, anymore, and these tactics and strategies will not be useful to hand twist a country like Pakistan. So it's not helpful for Afghanistan's future. So I hope so. Uh, in future, that would be understood by the Afghan Taliban.
Inshallah.
Inshallah.
Okay. Also, so other than what we're seeing in terms of hard power politics in Afghanistan and the region, looking into the future, um, hopefully a brighter future for Afghanistan and the region. How is trade impacting the region? Because I've heard there's quite a lot of investment coming in from China. There's also lots of, in terms of like mines and minerals and things like that, but also tourism, hotels being um, built by external investment. So, are we seeing some green shoots in terms of positive investment and a brighter future for the people inside Afghanistan?
Yeah, yeah. It's it could be done, but there's something we I usually refer as a precondition. That is something that Afghanistan needs to do. First of all, the first and actually the foremost step that I would like to, I foresee is about inclusive Afghan-led political process. Uh, you know, it needs to establish an inclusive and Afghan-led political process that must involve all relevant stakeholders, including Pashtun and non-Pashtun communities of Afghanistan, civil society groups, women organizations, ethnic and religious minorities. And for that reason, first of all,
Yeah.
the regional and global players must facilitate target the direct negotiations between different stakeholders of Afghanistan, which is important to reach a comprehensive political settlement and to address the grievances and aspirations of all parties, which is why that was manifested in the the agreement between Afghan Taliban and United States of America when the U.S. was withdrawing and the Afghan Taliban committed for that. So they have to ensure that the political process is transparent, accountable, and inclusive of diverse voices, including women, youth, and marginalized groups, to promote social cohesion and sustainable peace. So, if unless until it has not been done, the fruits of economic sustainability, trade agreements, and the new Silk Roads, even the Chinese ambitious projects like Belt Road Initiative will never become a reality. Yes, theoretically, I can
Yeah.
answer that what potential Afghanistan have, how how amazing and exceptional minerals Afghanistan have. Um, it has so much affinity within the geographical proximity with Central Asia, with Iran, with Pakistan, with China, and as a front face of South Asia, how big potential it carries from CPAC, from India, from altogether Russia. So in theoretical perspective, I can say a lot of things about it. But in reality, because I am also citizen of a country where I know
Yeah.
that instability does not provide you an opportunity. Insecurity could never be considered an opportunity. So for that reason, only political stability is the way forward. And for the political stability, when I talk to Afghani academicians, when I talk to Afghani future, which is their youth, when I look into their eyes, which are shining with hopes and dreams, only their participation into the political process, into the governance of Afghanistan, is the ideal, way forward for any, you know, any kind of opportunity for Afghanistan. And I believe when there is a political stability, challenges become opportunity, and when there is political instability, opportunities becomes challenges. So for that reason, for 34 provinces of Afghanistan, if there are whatever governance system they come across and agreed upon, so those 34 provinces would have 34 parliaments, 34, representation in the national parliament. So civil societies would be there, media would be there, freedom of speech would be there, identity would be there, you know, the hopes would be there. So altogether, that process will ensure what is Afghanistan. Otherwise, Afghanistan, as I said at the beginning, it has been known as graveyard of great empires. It has been never given a context of future of the world, rather than it is
Yeah.
a grave. So for that reason, we have to change that perspective through political process and stability.
Wow, Dr. Tauqeer, I can see you're a great teacher, lecturer, instructor.
Thank you. Thank you.
I would love to be join your class one day. I think I've just learned so much in this
Yeah.
session here. It's amazing how you explain things and put them into a context.
Thank
There's so much to talk about in Afghanistan, wider geopolitics, the role of India, Iran, um, China. There's a lot. Maybe we can get you again in the future. But before I let you go, I would love to pick your brain on another geopolitical matter, which is um, we probably don't have obviously time to go into the wider conflict between Israel and Iran, but what happened recently at the start of this year in January, how Iran attacked inside Pakistan and there was tit for tat attacks. Could you please tell us a little bit about what happened there, and maybe we could pick that up in a future discussion as well?
you. Yeah, but that yeah, that's a kind of you know something normally you would never expect between Pakistan and Iran to
It
happening.
was surprising. It was a shock.
Yeah, yeah, it was really surprising for many who are actually living in that part of the world and interact with each other. But it has to look into the context, because in politics, nothing is predictable. Today whatever is happening, tomorrow maybe it's not happening. And in international relations, we used to tell our students, and we used to believe on that as well. A friend of today could be the enemy of tomorrow, and there is no permanent friends or enemies. There are permanent interests. So in this context, we have to look into. I don't have an understanding how Iranian politics is evolving, because most of the time I'm not happy with the Iranian politics, because Iranians like more indirect way of doing politics, and they are more under the carpet, where they like to trust more on the proxy side of it, more on the instability side of it. So it's a kind
Yeah,
of
interesting
you know
perspective. Yeah,
yeah, something that they always do in Middle East. But so when they come into the direct posturing, we have only seen them that they just try to use that direct posture in context to keep alive their religious politics within Iran, and Israel becomes a very handy, factor for them. And same is true for Israel, because for Israel, for the
yeah,
direct posture, Iran becomes very handy for them, because they sometimes I believe that you scratch my back, I scratch your back. It's a kind
yeah,
of political phenomena happening between Iran and Israel. So it's a kind of subjective, explanation to that I want to put place for Iran and Israel's scratching. But the question was about Pakistan and Iran. And let me give you a few examples. For example, there are a lot of things happening under the carpet. As I've said, Iran used to do that. Well, if you ask me that, did it ever happen that Iran crossed over Pakistan's territory, or had a military operation here? Yes, many times. And if
hmm,
you say that, did Pakistan has crossed Iran border into Iran and did military operations? Yes, many times. But not both sides have never, claimed for it. But
yeah,
this time, when Iran did, they claimed it. They said yes, they did it. And this was something, a new phenomena that Pakistan cannot tolerate. Pakistan cannot allow a new reality to prevail.
hmm,
So the reality is that they never own, they never declare. So whatever interest they're having under the carpet, it's okay,
yeah,
but beyond the carpet does not allow. And that's Pakistan. And strategically speaking, Pakistan's policy is not only regarding Iran. This is this is part and parcel of Pakistan's strategic posturing towards any country. For example, in 2001, when you look into, there was Salala incident check post, when one of NATO, helicopter mistakenly, I would say mistakenly, because Pakistan and US were allies, and they are allies today even. So mistakenly, through an airstrike, around 30, precisely 27, Pakistani soldiers were killed, and it was the peak of global war against terrorism. And NATO supply was passing by Pakistan from different regions, from Karachi, Punjab,
yeah,
and KP to Afghanistan, and it was ISAF, International Security Assistance Force, alongside NATO, which were operating in Pakistan, in Afghanistan. So all these developed countries, all these militarily powerful countries, were fighting a war in Afghanistan, but Pakistan's standing army soldiers were killed, and Pakistan stopped NATO supply. Even Pakistan did not bother that how big damage it would have. Pakistan's parliament passed resolutions. Four provincial parliaments passed resolutions. So Pakistan stood firm that this would not be allowed when it comes to sovereign identity of Pakistan, the forces of Pakistan, the national territory of Pakistan. So breach is not acceptable. So if breach is there, it would be agreed breach. It would be a
hmm,
consensus, but not
yeah,
single-handedly alone. So Pakistan even responded to that. Of course, Pakistan would not be launching an attack on American soil or American
yeah,
press, but there's a way of communication. So it was done at that time even, and multiple occasions. Even for example, you know, So with this, there are so many examples that I can give, but with keeping this background, if you look into Iranian airstrike in Pakistan, you can look into Indian airstrikes in Pakistan many times. Like in Balakot incident in 2019, when Indian airstrike ended up into Jabba area of in Pakistani Kashmir.
Yeah, I
So
remember.
as a reaction, that Pakistan had a control, military response airstrike, which as a result, two Indian aircrafts were shot down. One of Indian air pilot Abhinandan was captured. He landed in Pakistan, and then of course as a peace gesture, Pakistan handed over Abhinandan back to India, and that altogether brought some positivity between two countries to lower the stalemate, and the threshold was not crossed. So India is a reality. India is a military power in terms, and we have been long-standing issues. But when it comes to crossing over the national sovereignty without consent, I'm not trying to make a point that countries do allow under an agreement to cross, sovereignty, violate sovereignty. It's not that way, but I'm just saying it. So Pakistan responded that. The same way when Iran has done this act and they claimed for it, and their response was genuine. It was due. So
Mm.
I was not surprised that Pakistan Pakistan's response occurred. It was into
It
my
was
strategic
inevitable.
calculation that yes, Pakistan, yeah, it is inevitable. Pakistan will respond. And even recently, when you look into that, when TTP from Afghanistan came into Pakistan and they killed our soldiers recently, and you saw the same response that Pakistan did an airstrike in Afghanistan and responded.
Yeah, interesting. Because I agree with you. I was not surprised at all that Pakistan state reacted, and that they would have to react, even though within Pakistan media there were some people, prominent people, saying that we should just be kind of try and not escalate things, and we need to consider what's going on in the region, and trying to make excuses. But it was obvious what Pakistan would have to do something. But what was not obvious for me is what was Iran's strategic thinking in doing what it was doing? Because even if I try and think from Iranian point of view, that okay, Iran is feeling vulnerable. Israel is attacking different proxies of Israel. It's attacking different interests and different facilities of Iran across the Middle East, and Iran is trying to send a signal. So it launched an attack on Israeli interest in Syria, in Iraq. Those things are understandable, but I don't understand in that context what would the benefit be for Iran to do that act of attack inside Pakistan? How will that help? And ultimately, what were they thinking?
Well, I think um, the attack is an indication that Iranian Revolutionary Corps Guard is uh, is a kind of entity, a force within Iran, which is infiltrated with anti-state policies. Why I'm saying so? Because this only indicates that Iranian political authorities were not taken into consideration. It was not a political choice of Iran to do that. Rather, Iranian Revolutionary Corps Guard did this thing at his own. And to the best of my understanding, uh, the Iranian Revolutionary Corps Guard did their best to communicate to Pakistan that this is a mistake. And missiles don't or drones don't fly with mistakes. They yeah.
Yeah.
So they fly with targets. So but Iran is a closed state, and Iran must focus that the command system in Iran is very much volatile, and it's not good for the Iranian regional posture as well as its global standing. We have seen so many weaknesses in Iran's political order. We have seen so many problems in Iran's security apparatus operating under the carpet in the Middle East, and many countries have been apprehensive of Iranian insurgency and tools of disorder. But this is something that Iran should understand at a very serious note, that engaging militarily with neighboring countries like Pakistan is something which exposes its own vulnerabilities rather than puts pressure on
Exactly.
like Pakistan.
That
Yeah,
was the effect. Yeah.
yeah.
Thank you so much, Dr. Tauqeer. I really, really appreciate your time
Thank you.
and the knowledge you've shared with us, and especially that you gave us time on the weekend. You have such a busy schedule, and the weekend is a time for you to rest and enjoy time with your family. So I really appreciate it.
That has
Before we go,
been
is there anything that you want to share with us? If anyone wants to get in touch with you, do share your social media or anything you want to share with us, and we can upload it along with the podcast notes.
sure, sure. First of all, I would like to congratulate you and your team for bringing Afghanistan and Pakistan's perspective before your audience. And I also want to thank your audience in beforehand that they have been taking their time and listening to our conversation. It is really an honor to be part of a scholarship and a discussion which is very important. So, and your questions and your query and the perspective that you brought as part of this podcast has a great importance, and this has been something that the world at large must appreciate and understand regarding Afghanistan. Thank you very much for them. And Tafim, it was really an honor to be part of this conversation with you. The way you present,
Honors mine, Dr. Saab, and I'm humbled. Thank you.
thank you. And regarding my work and my social media platforms, I would definitely share it with you, so that if I can be of help and further, further my thoughts for the subject matter, it would be an honor for me to be part of it. So I will share it so that you can make it part of the podcast.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I'm sure I personally would love to see some of the projects that you're working on, and it's the same for our listeners. They would be interested, and we would love to have you back, inshallah, one day. There's so much going on in the
Yeah,
region, the wider region. So it would be great to have you back one day, inshallah, soon.
inshallah, inshallah. Thank you very much. Thank you,
Thank you so much. Thank you for your time.
thank you.
Bye bye.
Honor. Bye bye.